It began as an ordinary parliamentary session, one of those routine days filled with speeches, rebuttals, and the usual back-and-forth exchanges that define South African politics. The air inside the chamber was thick with the familiar rhythm of political theatre, promises made, criticisms hurled, and debates stretched endlessly. Citizens tuning in expected nothing beyond the predictable spectacle of politics, just another day in the nation's seat of power. But those expectations were shattered in an instant. Gayton McKenzie, the leader of the Patriotic Alliance, rose from his seat gripping an envelope tightly in his hand. His voice, commanding and forceful, thundered through the hall and silenced the murmuring chamber. Every eye turned toward him as his words echoed with intensity. What he revealed next would not only shock every member present but also millions of South Africans watching from their homes. With fiery conviction, McKenzie declared that he possessed evidence of an international arrest warrant for none other than President Sir Ramaphosa himself. This, he insisted, was not hearsay or political gossip, it was real, physical, and verifiable documentation. Waving the papers above his head, McKenzie brandished them like a torch piercing the dark corridors of power. His accusations sliced through the atmosphere like a blade. He claimed that the president was not only corrupt but was also using his position to shield himself from accountability while ordinary South Africans endured the crushing weight of crime, corruption, economic hardship, and government mismanagement. The reaction was immediate and explosive. The chamber erupted into chaos. ANC lawmakers rose in outrage, shouting McKenzie down, calling him a liar, a provocateur, and an enemy of democracy. Across the aisle, opposition MPs reacted in mixed fashion, some applauded his courage, while others urged calm, struggling to process what they had just heard. To viewers across the nation, it was unmistakable, this was no routine political jab. It was an outright declaration of war, delivered in broad daylight and broadcast live to an entire nation. McKenzie, known for his blunt honesty and disdain for political niceties, had always been a polarizing figure. But even by his bold standards, this was unprecedented. He wasn't merely accusing the president of domestic failings, he was alleging international disgrace. In one bold move, McKenzie transformed a local scandal into a matter of global consequence. The alleged warrant, he claimed, was no fabrication, official, binding, and undeniable. His voice thundered with passion as he insisted that South Africans not only had the right but the moral duty to know whether their leader was wanted abroad. For him, this was not about political rivalry, it was about accountability, justice, and the moral integrity of the nation. For years, whispers of corruption had haunted South Africa's political elite, stories of state capture, shady deals, and unexplained fortunes. But rarely had anyone stood in Parliament and detonated such a bombshell in real time. McKenzie framed the moment as a test of democracy itself. Would the ANC protect one man, or would the country stand for the truth? Cameras focused on President Ramaphosa, who sat motionless. His expression was calm, almost stoic, but the tightness of his jaw and the tension in his hands betrayed the pressure he was under. While his allies erupted in outrage, shouting accusations of slander and demanding McKenzie withdraw his words, the president himself remained silent. That silence, however, spoke volumes. In politics, silence is never neutral. To McKenzie's supporters, it was confirmation. To the ANC, it was a strategic refusal to dignify baseless claims. But to millions of South Africans watching, it seemed suspicious, perhaps even incriminating. The question ricocheted across homes, offices, and social media: is it true? Parliament soon descended into chaos. Lawmakers demanded that McKenzie retract his statement, while others shouted for the president to defend himself. The speaker's gavel pounded in vain as the chamber erupted in shouting matches, chants, and walkouts. Amid the pandemonium, one opposition MP's voice rose above the din: "If that's a lie, prove it now." The words hung in the air unanswered. The ANC benches roared in fury, but no response came. When the session finally adjourned, the House was in utter disarray. Across the nation, confusion and disbelief spread. Was their president truly the target of an international arrest warrant? For President Ramaphosa, the stakes could not have been higher. If the allegations were false, he had to disprove them swiftly and decisively. Every passing moment of silence only fueled the flames of suspicion. But if McKenzie's claims were true, the ANC faced an existential crisis, one that could shatter its credibility and destabilize the government itself. The president stood trapped between two impossible choices: remain silent and risk appearing guilty, or respond and risk legitimizing the claims. This moment had become far larger than any single individual. It was now about the integrity of South Africa's democracy. For too long, scandals had come and gone, with those in power escaping unscathed while citizens bore the consequences. But this time was different. The accusation of a global warrant placed South Africa under the world's microscope, testing not just its leadership but its moral fiber. The nation stood at a crossroads: would this be another scandal buried by time, or the turning point that forced transparency and accountability into the heart of its politics? Opposition parties wasted no time. Julius Malema and the economic freedom fighters called for emergency sessions, while the Democratic Alliance demanded a full-scale inquiry. Smaller parties added their voices, insisting that only complete public disclosure would suffice. There was one unifying sentiment among all: the truth must come out, no matter how painful or destructive it might be. At this stage, the issue was no longer about personalities but about principles, the right of the people to know who governed them, and whether that person carried the stain of international criminality. Whether McKenzie's evidence would stand up to scrutiny or crumble under investigation remained uncertain. But one fact was undeniable: history would remember this day. It would be etched in memory as the day South Africa's parliament caught fire, not with flames, but with the uncontainable blaze of accusation, outrage, and the desperate pursuit of truth.